Thank you for tuning in to YOUmedia Miami's Virtual Podcast. We're representing the Miami-Dade Public Library System. I'm Vianney, and I'm a specialist at the South Dade Regional Library. And we're all going to introduce ourselves.
Hello, everybody. I'm Chantel. I'm a specialist at Lemon City.
My name is Chris Munaji. Rao.
Nice.
What's up, guys? It's your girl, Shamir, the instructor at the North Dade, right?
Hi, I'm Rachel, and I'm an instructor at South Dade Regional Library.
Hey, what's up, guys? It's Vinny here from North Dade.
And I'm also an instructor. That's how.
It doesn't matter. It's okay. We all work for YOUmedia.
And we also have Nate on this podcast as well.
Whee! Welcome, Nate.
Welcome, Nate. He's from
Welcome back.
Lemon City location. Okay, so today's podcast, we've created a safe space to discuss the current events surrounding Black Lives Matter and police brutality. What's happening right now is not just an African-American issue, it's an American issue. Brutality affects us all. It affects our family members, our friends, our neighbors. And this can be an overwhelming time for many of us watching the current events on social media and on the news. So this time we're taking a moment to just discuss and unpack a lot of our feelings. So let's begin this discussion. So I would like to know how is everyone feeling during this time?
We are all taking it one day at a time. Nate, what would you say?
I mean, you couldn't have said it any better. 2020 has been a movie, a disaster movie. It sucks, man, but we just gotta get through it, man. That's all we can do. So, yeah.
And sorry, Chris. I was going to say hello to Khalil. We see that you've joined. We're happy to have you. Okay. Anyone else can jump in if they feel the need to express how they're feeling during this time. It's no pressure.
No pressure.
Chris, aren't you saying something, Chris? Or
Yeah, at times I've been feeling confused. But also I feel like I've been liberated in a way to grow. Just a lot more learning, a lot more understanding of. Yeah.
Definitely. It's a lot to unpack when you see things in the news or you read things online. You can go down a rabbit hole of just statistics and information. It could get overwhelming. So definitely I'm happy that we're creating a safe space to just talk about our feelings and unpack everything that we're experiencing during this time. So does anyone have any questions? We can all go around and say our questions.
How have most of you all been getting your information regarding this movement? For myself, it's been social media, of course. Towards the end of the day, I'll turn on the news, but right before we started this, for example, I got an update on my computer. So what's your main source these days?
Okay, yeah, I'll go. It's been social media. I mean, I don't watch the news a lot. I don't like to watch the news. It's very depressing, so that's where I get most of my sources from. I usually go online sometimes, but yeah.
Would you say that's Instagram or what social media?
Yeah, it's just IG most. I'm on IG. I try to avoid IG because sometimes I get a little bit toxic, but that's where everything's coming from nowadays. So.
And so as far as the type of information, is it from people reposting from other sources of, news, or from perhaps celebrities, or from what types of news? Because there's so many different ways to gather information at this time. So I'm curious what types of information that you're getting, such as videos, text, or anything else like that.
I mean, I get a lot. I watch a lot of sports, so a lot of the sports sources like Bleacher Report and ESPN has been talking about it a lot. You know, World Star, you know, they talk about everything. So, you know, that's how I found out about it. You know, so it's kind of, yeah, celebrities as well. But,
celebrities too. Yeah.
yeah.
I think I try to follow a lot of like activists and organizers, people who are a part of organizations and really active in the movement, because there can be a lot of like misinformation out there that you just have to try to like sift through on social media. I also like Twitter. You can get fast news quickly. Sometimes I'll find out information quicker than my parents who are sitting in front of the television through Twitter. And there's a lot of like think pieces a lot of people post, and just great minds, like other than like Instagram, which can, I'm just gonna say it, be a little ratchet at times. You have to like filter through the nonsense on Instagram as opposed to like Twitter, in my opinion.
Yeah, for me,
Same.
I had to, you know, same. Like I actually stepped away from Instagram for a little bit because it started, you know, it didn't inform me. It was just like almost kind of like just publicly like show what's happening rather than just like short of like educating me in what's really going on. So I kind of like went old school, and I was just reading, you know, like my local newspaper, like the Miami Herald. And it's been great because it's actually like really informative, you know. Like Twitter is obviously like my number one source of news, but besides like watching TV, I feel like your newspaper is actually one of those, you know, institutions that provide a little bit more than just like what you see on the, like from the media on TV, because the media just tends to like show what's going on right now, and there's a lot of other things in this world that, you know, we have to be paying attention to. So, you know, I definitely encourage you guys to also check that out. You know, you don't need to pay for anything for the newspaper. You can just download the app for Miami Herald, and you can see everything that it informs, if for local and nation and worldwide. So yeah, that's been my sort of view towards that.
The library also offers a newspaper if you're going to go that route too, right? The library?
Yeah, it does. I'm not sure. You have to go to the library to pick it up.
We have someone else that joined, Elijah. What's up, Elijah?
Hello.
What's up?
Yep.
Thank you for joining.
You're on mute right now. But yeah, the question at hand is like, hey, so where do you get your information from, especially regarding what's been going on now? So some of us shared, obviously we get it from social media, like on Instagram, following certain accounts. Some of us have taken a break from social media and went to like an older school route, like getting newspapers and reading them. So Elijah and Khalil, still free to share. How do you guys get your info?
Usually I just like listen to the news on the radio. That's probably my main source, like NPR and stuff. I don't really follow any social media news because I don't really care about social media.
When you say news on the radio, are you saying news on the TV and the radio, or simply just the radio?
Simply just the radio.
Okay. What radio channel?
NPR.
Impressive.
Oh.
And Khalil, I think you're interested in journalism, right? In a career. Am I mistaken?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Aren't you interested in a career in journalism, or considering it, like going down that route?
Yeah, I'm considering it.
I remember. Yeah, he participated in one of our podcasts where we had a journalist on the call. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Perfect discussion for you.
Mm-hmm.
Elijah, do you want to share? Is Elijah still?
I think he
left.
His computer just died. Sorry, he's my brother. So and his computer just died. So
I'm sitting right next to him.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
You want to share through his?
What was the question?
How are you getting your info regarding everything that's going on right now?
Through like social media, NPR, all that. It's kind of everywhere right now. Even TikTok.
So you kind of up Khalil a little bit by not only listening to NPR, you're on social media as well.
Yeah.
So what social media?
Mostly Instagram and TikTok.
TikTok? What?
Yeah, it's all over TikTok right now.
Wow.
TikTok was
Everyone's like protesting and stuff.
nice. Well, so really quick, shameless self-plug with the library. If you guys don't know, the library got resources. Y'all should know that. I go to the library. So I'm just gonna screen share really quick where you could go and some of the resources they have to, for you guys to not only know what's going on as far as the news, but to read and learn about why some of this stuff is happening and to educate yourself. So let me go ahead and share. Check it out. On the Miami-Dade public website, we have books, we have articles, we have a whole bunch of stuff you can research. But there's plenty of stuff regarding whether it's the Black Lives Matter movement, whether it's stuff on just America and their history. All you have to do literally is go to the Miami-Dade Public Library website. That's mdpls.org. And you can search up like whether it's Black Lives Matter, whether it's like, hey, racial injustice. Boom. I'll give you an example right here. That is not how you spell racial injustice. Search it in the search bar, and you'll see everything as far as like regarding that matter. And so just to let y'all know the resources there, okay?
Thank you, Chris.
And it's a cool free resource as well. Free keyword, free information at your fingertips. So I actually have a question. Have you ever been taught in school about just the civil rights, human rights, even protesting in general? Do they teach you that in school now? At all?
I mean, does African American history count?
Yeah, that does
Yeah.
count.
I mean, yeah, I'm thankful for that class because it kind of woke me up to what was really our history about. And I just found out that some history books were actually lying. And my father, when we used to talk, he used to educate me a lot about it. So, I'm just kind of aware than I used to be, because I was kind of just lost in the mix, and now, so
That's amazing that they had an African American history class in school, because when I was in school, we didn't have that. You had social studies or a history class, and you're just taught about the civil rights, and that's it.
So, yeah, but that's where they taught the class at. So, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
And was that was a whole class, or was that just a?
Yeah, it was a whole class. I remember it was my third period. Yeah. We used to do pretty projects on that on the time. So, yeah.
That's
really quick, what was some of the stuff that you said like was shared? Was like, oh snap, some of these other history books are lying, or what was it?
Oh man, I don't want to, what was one of the things that my teacher told me? She told me that Christopher Columbus stole some land, I believe. So it was because I used to always think it was Christopher Columbus that discovered, but my parents, but my parents and my father's how he was like, no, we used to own that land, and they kind of took it from us before, everything was going on, that we were the kings and queens, all that type of stuff. And just social justice. We used to take field trips on that too, which was like really cool. It woke me up, because like I said, I was locked in the mix. I didn't know what was going on with all that history, but which is cool. But
shout out.
Yeah, that's so many schools that don't do that, and are still misinformed. Like when I was growing
Mhm.
up, I was just taught about Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King, Malcolm
Mhm.
X, the civil rights, and that's it.
Mhm.
Like we
Yeah.
didn't with slaves, and like our history started at slavery, and we didn't know about our cultural heritage that was so rich, and that we had
Yeah.
civilizations in Africa. Um, it's just so much that they don't teach you, that you have to like take upon yourself to educate yourself, or your loved ones around you will have to educate you, because you'll be
Yeah.
misinformed. Like whether you're Black or Native American, any person of color,
Mhm.
whether you identify as Latino or Hispanic, like you're not taught that history in school.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, growing
Definitely.
up, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just saying that's definitely rare. But
Yeah, I think like for me growing up, it was always like, and I think for a lot of people growing up in school, especially at a young age, they would always talk about how slavery was abolished, right? It was like, oh, it's over, it's done, right? We got the 13th Amendment, boom. But then you would like, as you would, grow older, like obviously you start learning about segregation and like the civil rights movement, but it wasn't, they didn't talk about it enough. That was like the biggest problem, growing up, at least where I grew up, that it was almost like it's there, but it's gone. It's not a problem anymore in our country. And I think that's something that maybe we can sort of just discuss and see if that is something that is an underlying situation for all of us, because it wasn't a matter of, oh, I knew what happened, from obviously with Martin Luther King or Jim Crow, all the way to like whatever year you graduated high school or even in college. Like you knew the history, but you just knew what the history books told you, and kind of like it reached a limit, like it reached a point where there wasn't anything that you knew more about it unless you did it the research yourself or you talked to somebody that knew more than the truth. So for me, it's like things like that need to be a little bit more discussed in the classrooms, and like not just like, okay, let's talk about a history, but see the problem that also faced today, rather than, okay, what happened in the past is in the past. Not really. um, what we see in the past can always reflect the future. So I don't know if that is the same for you guys, like growing up in elementary or middle, high, or even in your, or I think all of the teens here are not in college yet, but if that's something that happened to you or you feel that way, we can definitely share some of that too.
So, Khalil, yeah, well, can you answer that question? Like, have you ever been taught anything about like civil rights, human rights, protesting? You don't have to put your school on blast.
Yeah, I have. Sorry, just noise in the background. Yes, I have been taught about civil rights and like abolishment of slavery, but it was like very vague as to like what came after it. They just kind of said, yeah, this happened, but didn't really explain too much of it.
I'm curious. Teachers, were they like Black that were teaching about that on those subjects?
Did they what? Sorry.
Or like, were they white or Black? Um,
It was just like I'm not. It was a while ago, so I don't really remember. If I'm being honest.
are you
But
talking in high school or middle
no,
school?
this was middle school.
oh,
So you haven't? Did you? What grade are you in now?
Ninth. Well, I'm going into 10th grade.
yeah.
Have you taken any like history class since? Like,
Yeah, AP history, but they didn't really. We didn't really get to the Civil War. I mean, we talked about it, but like very little. It
Yeah.
was like more generally focused on the entirety of the world instead of just like the United States.
I remember, like even in AP World History, it was a large focus on like
The war.
on Europe when I took that. and that perspective, it's been really one thing that I've been in a book club for about the past year, where people meet and talk about its political theory and strategy. But most of the things that we read are from not white perspective. And I feel that all the history books were, even if something was reported as, you know, like, you have things from a white perspective when it's in the American history book, because you're always gonna get the beginning of America being from a white perspective, because for the state, the US state, not the land, not the actual continent, but the American government was established by colonists.
Mm-hmm.
So when they teach that, they begin with that meaning that it takes a white perspective for the history.
Yeah.
Definitely. And as a child of color, no matter which you identify as, growing up in the school system, what does that translate in their head? It's like, white people are up here, they're superior, they established the country, and we're down here. You know, our confidence, I don't feel, is built in the school systems as people of color. You just come here, you just go to school, and you're taught in class, like, oh, you were slaves, you know, that happened years ago, now you're free and everything is good. But it's so layered. The issues are so layered. Institutionalized racism, just different things like that it could really break a child's confidence, especially a child of color.
Mm-hmm. I agree. My history book, I remember maybe a chapter of African American history. We breezed over that. That was just nothing. But thankfully, I had family members, as V said, that has taught me my history from a very, very young age. So I was getting, you know, my history from all kinds of other outlets. So yes, I agree with all of you. It's as well as Rachel, it's totally from a white perspective.
Yeah.
My first African American class was college.
Same. You have to pay for that education, like, if someone isn't teaching you at home.
It was required at my institution.
Oh, that's good.
Which is sad, because like there is a lot of encouraging and just truth in the history of like how Black lives, they contributed. I mean, obviously, like, built a lot of what's here, and not even outside of slavery. But you don't get to know like some of these accomplishments. Like, for instance, it's not until my early 20s till I found out about the Black Wall Street.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, same.
Like, never have I heard of what happened in Tulsa. Never.
And why wouldn't that be put in the history books?
Yeah, I'm like,
I didn't
what?
even hear about that either, and I can't believe that. Like,
let's educate our teens, for those who don't know about Black Wall Street.
Chris, can you educate?
That's how Chris was going.
Yeah. So,
tell them.
The community in Oklahoma, Tulsa, and around 1919 is when so there was some riots against this Black community, because it was really they were doing well. They had their own banks, their own businesses, and like, you know, you hear the term right now, probably, hey, Black-owned businesses and this and that, and like as if it's something new, but it's not new. This is just like, this has been happening. So with that being said, you know, there's a stigma out there that like a dollar can't stay in the Black community for that long compared to other races, but that can be proven out wrong. Like, no, we could actually build a sustainable economy here in the Black community. And so anyway, this was in 1919. So just imagine. Start talking about the 1900s. Yes, there was a lot of turmoil between races. So what happened? Well, white people didn't like it, and they basically burned it down. Killed a lot of lives too in doing so. And that was a riot. They were rioting against that. They were like, "Hey, we don't want it, shouldn't be."
Yeah, that's basically it in a nutshell. So a lot of people are learning that history that, there was an entire community and they owned their own pharmacies, their own banks, of course, owned churches, grocery stores, basically our own community thriving. And yes, it was burned completely to the ground. You can see some sketches or images of that if you Google that.
And why are people so pressed?
It says that about 10,000 Black people were left homeless, and property damage amounted to more than 1.5 million in real estate and 750,000 in personal property, which back then was a lot. It's equivalent to over 32 million in 2019. And the property was, and this is notable, that the property was never recovered nor compensated for.
Of course.
So
I think that last part where she says it's never been compensated for, I think like we all know that nothing's ever been compensated. There's been no reparations or anything for, African American people. This was free labor for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years.
And there's Black Wall Streets. There's been other cases of Black Wall Streets being burned down. That's obviously the infamous story, but it just shows our tenacity and the power we have within us to always keep fighting for rebuilding our communities. And we get knocked down, and we as a people always come back and rebuild. So yeah, always.
Really quick, and I want to ask you, Nate and Khalil, some more questions. Well, just to add that to your education, which, and I'm sure as you get older, you'll realize, like, why are you not teaching me some of this stuff, man? And this is coming out people's taxes, anyways. Because you want a quality education, you really, you want truth. And one thing that is not educated as well is like, hey, the things that are happening, especially in history with within Black people, is like the things that are happening that has kept Black people oppressed. So like if you guys research terms like redlining, very important. If you guys research what the GI Bill is, how people fought for this country, but what happened to Black people who fought for this country in World War II, stuff like this, you get to understand, oh, okay, so why is it that it feels like Black communities today, they're always like in the ghetto, or there's no wealth there. To help understand some of that, I think that needs to be taught as well. Like, because Benny was mentioned earlier, what's affecting us now? How did we get here?
So. Education as well. I agree. Thank you for adding that.
Yep.
Okay, so the next question that we wanted to discuss is talking about police officers. When you see police officers, do you feel safe or fearful, and why? No pressure, not everyone jump at once,
Oh, okay. So you said, you basically saying, am I scared of cops?
Yeah.
Do you feel safe?
I don't fear nobody. I don't walk in fear at all. To me, it just shows a sign of weakness. No offense to anybody else, but I've never been put in a position where, fortunately, I always had good experiences with cops. I never got into an encounter with a cop to a point where they're drawing out a gun. To me, I've been very blessed, that I've never been in that type of situation, because to me, it's just all about building a good image. You never want to do something to affect your image or your brand. That's what my parents taught me the most. You know, you don't want to go around doing these stuff. Don't ever do that, because somebody catches you doing that, they're gonna remember that. And even if you were a good person, they're always gonna bring up that one thing, you know? So that's how I always was putting up in life, you know? So, but no, I don't fear cops at all. I don't do anything to put in a position to that, even sometimes when they do try hard, but you know, yeah, man. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Anyone else want to jump in? No pressure. Like, it's just a question. Don't want anybody to feel pressure. Well, I can say personally, I don't fear anyone similar to Nate, but I do feel anxious around cops. I don't necessarily trust them because of the history. It's definitely a bloody history between like cops and Black and brown lives. And like you have a great image, you know, you don't do anything to incriminate yourself, but there have been cases in the country where people aren't doing anything. They just walk into the store with some Skittles.
Yeah.
You know, they're just living their lives. They're in their homes with their nephew playing video games. And you just never know. With that being said, I find that Black and brown children, whether you identify as Hispanic or Black, they're policed at very young ages. Like, if you think about it, it's very rare, and I could be wrong, anybody could correct me, but if I speak to my white friends with children, they don't talk to their kids about making sure they act accordingly in front of the police. Like, when they get their license, they don't have to keep their hands on the steering wheel, not move, you know, they're free to just be and get their license and go on a joyride. But Black mothers have to worry about telling their Black sons or daughters as well, there are certain things you can and cannot do. Like, don't wear a hoodie, you know, because you look like a quote unquote thug, you know. It's just so many different policing and violence that we have to be exposed to at such an early age that I don't think others understand that have privilege. So that's my personal opinion.
I agree with you. I have three older brothers, so I've seen some things. I've witnessed my brother look at a cop and they feel a certain way and they look them up and arrest them right there on the spot. That's that. I've witnessed things like that. Or come out of the house, and the moment you come out of the house, that it's just so many different scenarios where, you know, it can be scary. So yeah, I too felt like V, not necessarily scared. I'm more so anxious and automatically just like, what is it? I'm terrified. Especially, I remember getting pulled right blocks from my house, and I was shaking because all of those stories that you hear, Sandra Bland, that is me. That's every other person. So and she knew her rights. And she was a vocal activist, and she isn't here. But yes, I definitely feel the same way. It can be a little scary.
Yeah.
I agree with Nate, because, you know, one thing I teach others, it's like, you know, you don't fear nobody. I only fear God, who could kill the body and put me to hell. And so, however, I am aware it could be tempting, the thought of me losing my life, especially when I have people who I'm responsible for, like my family, is there. The fact that I even have to think about that and battle with that in my mind when I do get pulled over, it's there. So it's not, yeah, I'm not afraid of the cop, but the fact that I have to battle, like, okay, let me make sure I'm not, whatever, I don't come too aggressive, because I don't want to push them to give them a reason to shoot me. And I had a situation where this happened last year, a year and a half ago. I was on my way to YOUmedia. I was on my way to work.
What?
I did a U-turn, so it was illegal. I didn't know that though, because they had construction. It was like, couldn't you bear with me? It was an illegal U-turn. It was a Hispanic guy, a cop, He pulled me over. He came out so aggressive. And the first thing he asked me, with his hand drawn on his gun, was, "Do you have a weapon in the car?"
Whoa.
I had to be like,
Wow.
"Hey, you ain't about to do this to me." So I told him no. I had to make sure I was gentle. But you kind of feel like you could feel the pressure coming to you. You could feel like, hey, if I were to do anything stupid, he would most likely shoot at me. And when I called my wife after the incident, he told me, like, I don't know if he was having a bad day or whatever, but he told me, oh, he was yelling too. I was like, why do you have to yell? He was like, yeah, whatever. He told me I did a legal U-turn. But the fact that, I have to call my wife afterwards and be like, yeah, this happened. It's embarrassing, but it's like it's pressure that doesn't need to be there. So it's real. Let me just tell you, yeah.
It's thank you for sharing that. That's tough to hear. We didn't know that, you having to experience that, and then still take your behind to work, and then try to, like, you just dealt with that trauma, and then you have to go into work and put a smile on your face and just deal with it, and then go home to your family.
Gotta brush it off.
Yeah, you have to brush it off, and that's what a lot of people of color go through. Prime example right there, the trauma that we see, the race-based drama is what we learned in our last podcast, is definitely real. And it's also traumatic just looking on social media and seeing, your brothers and sisters, we're all human, being killed. It gives you anxiety. I know for me, like, I can't watch the news before I go to bed. It's tough. It's definitely tough. But there's always been an ugly history between, police and people of color in this country, and I'm sure in other countries as well. So I found some information on the history.com and PBS, and they talked about how the institution of just
Patty roll.
in general.
Sorry, I was thinking patty rollers.
Yeah. Oh, they started off as slave patrols and night watchers. They would watch Native Americans and make sure and police them, as well as slaves, to make sure that they weren't trying to run away from their masters. And it's always been, that's the foundation of the police department. And there has been investigations by the FBI that shows that a lot of hate groups like the KKK have basically, like, infiltrated the police department. They have become police officers in order to stop investigations on hate groups, and as well as spew out hate to the world, kill Black lives. So I think that's also where the anxiety comes in, because yes, not all police officers are bad, in my opinion, but you don't know, like, who's really for you, like, in service to protect you, and who's really against you when it comes to the police force. So I just wanted to share that, my opinion.
Yes. Some more history there.
Yeah, definitely.
Patrol
Yeah, I didn't know.
also spelled patty rollers or patty rollers. That was the original job of them, to make sure you stayed in place, make sure slaves did not run away.
Definitely. So we have a discussion activity.
Hey.
Okay, so the activity is called They Say But I Know. So we have different topics. Rachel and I can give an example. So Rachel will say the topic, and then I'll say the answer to the question or to the prompt.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
They say.
So.
Blank.
I apologize that I lost the page.
It's okay.
Is one of them Black Lives Matter?
Is All Lives Matter. So, for example,
Yeah, we can give an example. So we have topics, and what we're gonna say is they say. Basically, I think this is a really great point. I think in this day and age, we get a lot of ideas thrown at us, and there's a lot of different opinions out there that are supported by various other encounters or facts. But it is important at the end of the day that you feel secure in what you believe, because that's what you have to, those are the shoes that you have to fill, right? So
Right.
what we wanted to do is to do an exercise where we'll say a kind of a slogan, a bandwagon type of, not bandwagon necessarily, but an opinion that gets out there. And in this circumstance, when we say, it doesn't really signify one person. It could be the media, it could be other people, it could be anything. But the challenge is to say, what do you really feel inside, or what do you know inside that relates to that? Does that make sense? So for example, we could say, they say all lives matter, but I know.
And you will have to fill in the blank there.
So for example, they say all lives matter, and I would say, but I know all lives do matter, but we're specifically talking about Black lives, the issues that Black lives face. It's not to negate everyone's life. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Let's do another one. They say
all police are prejudiced. But I know that all police aren't prejudiced.
Correct.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
definitely
Nate, you guys understand?
I'll try.
How about this?
I kind of get what you're going.
Okay.
All lives matter.
So Nate will do it with you. So the prompt is all lives matter. So they say all lives matter, but I know, and then you fill in I know.
Okay. Okay. All right. I'll try.
Okay.
I'll give it a try.
Does it have to be I know or but this?
It could be but I know. Just whatever feels comfortable with you. You can
But anything.
Would you say, but I think?
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like,
say but I think as well.
Take a little pressure off.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Nate, they say all lives matter.
Okay.
But Dylan.
but I know they're talking about Black lives. So.
Okay.
Specifically, yeah.
Okay.
No,
Okay, cool.
But I think, yeah.
They're not though.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna put Vinny on the spot. The prompt is all protesters are looters.
But I know that all protesters aren't looters. We have some peaceful protesters. We have a lot of peaceful protesters, actually. We have a lot of protesters with a voice that are tired of the systemic problem. Unfortunately, we have protesters that are looters, but that's not all of them.
Good job. And Shamir, I'm gonna put you on the spot. One more. This is the last one. They say Black people are violent.
They say Black people are violent, but that is not the case, because you can't like generalize a whole demographic based on a few bad apples, I would say.
But I know Shamir. Look at that.
Perfect. So that was just like
Thank you, Chris.
exercise to, like Rachel said, like allow you to critically think for yourself. Like it's going to be a lot of people on Instagram that are saying all lives matter, Black lives matter, because everyone has an opinion. And people kind of just jump on the bandwagon of what they see on Instagram. But it's important to, when you get that information, receive that information, to say what you know and what you've researched. Oh, Chantel.
Yes, I'd like to go.
Oh, you like to go? Okay, so I'll give you one.
Oh, I had mine ready.
You had your ready? Okay.
I had a couple while you were going.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to bring up this case. They say all lives matter, But Philando Castile was actually following police requests, reaching for his license, and he was shot dead in front of his family. And that officer got off free there.
Valid point. That's what we're dealing with
Was that okay?
right now. I had some statistics actually that I wanted to share on mappingpoliceviolence.org and a couple of other publications like CNN and NBC. They've been listing statistics of police killings. So in 2019, the year alone, there were only 27 days where the police did not kill someone. 27 days. And they have an actual graph of the yearly calendar. Everything in red is when a police officer killed 3 or more people on that day. In other countries, police killing rates were extremely low. It said that, I think on CNN or another news publication, that I think the police in 1 year killed over 1,000 people in this country, which is insane. And from 2013 to 2019, there were 99% of officers not being charged with a crime. And they actually did a little graph. So all the officers in red weren't charged. The little bit of blue that you could barely see was charged.
So one, can I jump in with a little?
Yeah.
Really? So one reason why officers kill people without facing a charge is something called qualified immunity, which is basically it's in the laws that a government official in this capacity, not us, I'm a government official too, but certain government officials are not held personally liable for a constitutional violation and for money damages under the federal law, so as long as the official did not violate a clearly established law. So basically, the laws that that people are falling under in the police force are not the same as the laws that a civilian has to follow.
And I mean, under a union as well, that most police officers are, that are protected. There's been a lot of demands to change those laws that are like loopholes to get away with, what's basically just murders. So like, yeah, like there's a lot of people who do get away with saying like, if they do feel that they're afraid for their life, they're protected to not get charged because they were, self-defense. But when you start, watching some of these videos, you can really see, okay, who should have been afraid for their lives? I don't think it was a police officer. So there's been a lot of demands for that little loophole there. So cops can't just get away with, basically murdering people.
Definitely. And lastly, I also wanted to share some statistics. TheGuardian.com wrote an article recently that said in a 3-year span, Latinos in California represented 46% of deadly police shootings, second to the rates for African Americans. So the Latin and Black communities have a common pain and a common oppression. And I don't know, I'm not sure if you've heard, but the New York Times wrote an article about the stop and frisk in New York City. It says during Michael Bloomberg's tenure from 2002 to 2013, police officers stopped and questioned people they believed to be engaged in criminal activity on the street more than 5 million times. Officers often searched the detainees. The vast majority of them were young Black and Latino men for weapons that rarely materialized. So I just wanted to make a note of this. This eroded the trust of police in Black and Latino neighborhoods in New York City as well. So I wanted to share, it's just a constant, rabbit hole of history that's easily accessible to you if you search on the internet on any news publication. So I find if people say, oh, I didn't know this, or they act like they're oblivious to this information, it's because they don't want to know, in my opinion, because it's right in your face.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so does anybody else have any questions? Or Chris, you look like you wanted to say something.
Nate and Khalil, are you guys still there?
Yeah, Nate.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm here.
Khalil, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
So I want to ask, did you guys watch the video of George Floyd being murdered?
No, I didn't.
No.
Okay.
Couldn't, man.
Honestly, I've heard like a
Yeah.
bunch of things about it, and
Yeah.
it sounded really sickening, so I didn't really want to watch it.
I'm on the same boat. I couldn't see it. Couldn't bear watching that.
What did you guys hear about the video?
Mostly just the main details. He got pulled over. And I believe they had like 2 cops with him. They ended up like grabbing him and put him on the floor, and then the dude put his neck. The cop put his knee on his neck, and he ended up dying from suffocation. And now they're covering it up. We're saying he died from some type of symptom. And I heard that the cop in Georgia actually beefing, so which is kind of it was very disturbing, man. I couldn't finish it, man. I couldn't finish it,
I started watching it, and
You started.
Yeah, I couldn't watch it. I couldn't watch it, man. I don't like seeing stuff like that. That's just me. I just
There were 4 cops, but you're right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What about you, Khalil? What did you hear?
Sorry. All I've heard was that like the main story about it is that like he got like arrested and like they were choking him and like he couldn't breathe. I've just heard like the main story about it. I haven't watched the video at all because I really don't want to see that.
Yeah. My wife, she couldn't watch the video either because there's something about, you see his life lost right there in the video. You see it, like it's gone. So it was very sad. I know when I watched it, the reason why I watched it was because there was a artist that I know of that he knew the guy more on a personal level because they used to do like ministry, like church events and stuff. And so he shared about it. I was like, oh snap, who is this? Like, what happened? And so I went to go watch the video. And then after watching it, I realized like that what I just watched could be someone that I know personally, the same way this dude knew him personally. It could be someone that's either I'm working with, someone close. And so I just teared up, and and as I was watching it, it angered me because it was like, man, can someone not do anything? Like, can someone not move this knee off his neck? Like, can someone just not like? But I'm sure they were, battling. Hey, if I were to get involved, they're gonna probably do the same thing to me.
Mm-hmm.
And, so I understand the struggle, but I was like, bro, what if I was there? I probably would have been arrested or worse, dead. Because I was like, how can you just watch that like in person? Like you literally see him, and it's like, man, I just seen myself pushing a police officer. Like I imagine him. But
Yeah.
Anyway, so I was angry watching it as well.
Yeah, I was definitely angry too. I mean, I watched it. I didn't see the whole video. It was really tough. I think the part that made me like really teared up was the portion where he was calling for his mother. And then to learn, I think when I watched the first funeral, to find out his mother died, like,
Not even alive.
was even alive. So it was like, wow, you know, for a grown man to call out to his mother like that was very, like, heartbreaking for me. Yeah, and even like during the funeral, like they had like a moment of silence for all 8 minutes and 46 seconds. And just, that's a very long time. Like to have someone's full weight like on your neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, that's, I don't know, I'm speechless. I don't know what to say.
Yeah, I don't think I've had the moment to think about that time, Shamir. You're right. Like that, I've heard people have done, protests or moments of silence for 8 to 9 minutes, and I don't think I've taken the moment to really think about it. Really take the time out and think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a really long amount of time. It's a really long amount of time, and yeah, I haven't watched the whole video, but I've listened to people describe the whole video, read over the whole transcript of the video, and it's interesting because that you mentioned, Chris. I recently been to a protest where it was actually led by somebody who survived a violent attack by police after he was actually defending a woman who had been pushed to the ground by police during them moving people off of the streets after a celebration after a Miami Heat game. So he had put himself over the woman who they had knocked over as they were clearing the streets, and challenged them to stop, and they got angry, took him into a staircase and beat him up. He got sent to the hospital in Miami. He's alive and well now. He's doing but he's still fighting that case. And he's still doing a lot of activism around it. But to think that, that there is that fear that, that will get turned onto you outside of the law, that the laws don't really apply in those scenarios.
Yeah.
Definitely.
But yeah. Is that everybody's? You saw the video, of course, the full video. It was hard for me to find the full video, let me say. I think they've taken it down, right? It's a bit much. So
And they release additional footage. So they apparently, from what I've seen, they arrested him and they placed him in the back of the police car. And then they pulled him out of the car.
Yeah, so they arrested him outside the car, then they pulled him from the other side of the car, and that's when he was on the floor. In all those minutes, people are saying, get your knee off, and he's not budging. But what sickened me, because I did finally watch, it took me a while to actually want to watch the full video, but when I did, yeah, I was up. Yes, I shed my tears. I was up really late that night because I watched a murder before my eyes. And for the medics to have to come and say, sir, lift up your knee, that's what blew me. Mm-hmm. That's what blew me. The medics had arrived, and it's just something in him just would not let up. It was just like, I have to finish this. It was just like, what is wrong? So then he lifts the knee, and there's speculations about how they handled that too, because they do check for pulse, but then they lift George Floyd's body up and he's literally limp like a sack of potatoes going into the ambulance. So a lot of people are upset about even that, because certain protocol calls for you to, do certain things while there versus just rolling him into the back. So that's the last we saw of him.
Yeah, I think it's thank you for explaining that. It's interesting that Nate and Khalil, I think it's great that they decided not to watch it, but to also, whoever decides not to watch it, but to also stay informed so they're just not in the dark as to what's going on, because I think that finding joy during this time and also self-care is an act of resistance. And it's secondary trauma. Like, you don't have to be there to be traumatized by what you're viewing in the media, on social media. So taking that time for yourself and deciding within yourself and being introspective, like, can I handle this right now? Like, no, but it's a good thing to take a step back, because it can be overwhelming. Because before we had technology was so advanced, like lynchings, it was like a modern day lynching, what we just witnessed. And years ago, before technology advanced, I was trying to say, lynching would be just something that you would see in the town. You know, you just watch and view, and that small community would be traumatized by that. But now, like, worldwide, we're seeing modern day lynchings. And I think that's why people are so outraged. And it's just not isolated with police brutality in this country alone. There are people in London who are protesting right now because they're just as outraged by what they've seen. And also they're experiencing it in where they live as well. So I think that, so like video and technology, it can also be a blessing and a curse at the same time, because you're constantly bombarded with information that's traumatizing, but it's allowing you to stay informed and to have actual proof. Not that that always helps in cases, because as we know, police still do get off, but at least we do have that historical frame reference.
Right.
It happened. I was here, and this is what someone I know experienced, or someone another human being experienced. What I said just made sense. But yeah.
Ask another question. Yeah. So for Nate and Khalil, I want to ask you guys, have you guys ever personally experienced or witnessed racism or discrimination? And if you guys have, like, how did that impact you?
For me, as far as like racism, not really. Like I said, I think I'm fortunate and blessed not to be witnessed by that type of stuff, because I have a little bit of a temper, but I've learned to control it. As far as like discrimination that goes towards like gay people, like we talked about in the last podcast, I did witness that. As far as like racism, no. I think I have good people in my area that, we respect each other, and I appreciate that, so.
Yeah. Okay. What about?
I would also say that I am quite fortunate. I haven't really ever experienced racism myself. I have seen racism or sexism towards other people, like women or gays, or like gay people. It's really just something that's just a horrible thing. Although I will say that I've never, as I said, I haven't experienced it myself, but that it just really doesn't give me the experience of what they would be feeling. So I don't really know what they feel like, and I guess I have no idea where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
So what is the difference between racism and discrimination?
Or we can start with what is racism?
Okay. So I guess I'll answer. So racism is a belief that a personality, a behavior, morals can be traced back to the race, and that one race is superior over the other. So thinking Asian people are all better at math is in fact racist. Thinking that all Black people are violent and more likely to commit crimes is racist. So you can be both racist and discriminatory against another race.
Mm-hmm. Yes, basically back to Shamir's whole Black Lives Matter. What was your statement about Black Lives Matter? They say, but you can't say that all Black people are violent
Yeah, you
because
can't generalize.
you generalize, right, an entire race. So when
Right.
you generalize an entire race on one thing, yes, that is racist.
That's a good point.
So discrimination.
So it's unjust or prejudiced treatment, prejudicial treatment. Am I saying it correctly? Of people of different categories. So it could be their religion, their sexuality, their race, everything. So you discriminate against them. So it's mainly the act. So, for example, racial profiling, or a common one is if African American goes into a store and they're being followed around the store because they have racist thoughts that they're going to steal, that all Black people steal, that's you discriminating against that Black customer.
That is racial profiling.
Yeah,
You
it's
just
all racial.
follow a specific person around the store because you feel that they may. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Discrimination.
So what are you going to say?
I was just thinking of a movie that I saw. It's a true story, but there was a man convicted by the way that he looked. That's literally how he was convicted, and he served I don't know how many years in prison. But it's like you look like you did it. That's discrimination.
Mm-hmm.
Just Mercy. It's a good movie.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's Mercy.
Yeah.
Really good.
I shared a story, Nathan Khalil. This was about 7 years ago. I was living in Chicago, and I had a Black male. He's a friend, and one of my other friends with me, she's Black as well. We were walking down the street, and a group of white men approached us and asked us if we smoked weed, and we told them no, we don't. And they was like, oh, so you don't have weed? And I said no, but we were offended because they assumed because we were Black that we smoked weed. Like, that's a racist thought. You're already racist, and like for even thinking that to begin with. And then when we walked away, they called us the N-word, and my guy friend heard, and he didn't say anything because he's not from Chicago. He's from the East Coast, and he felt like as a Black man, like he wanted to keep the women that he were around safe, that he was around, which was us, safe. And he could easily get beat up. He can go to jail. He doesn't know what could happen to him. So it's just little things like that. Even to this day, when I think about that, obviously, like, it just hurts. I can just say, nonetheless, it just hurts, you know, that I had to experience that, and that we all had to experience that.
Yeah.
Share.
I have a minor story, but it's something I've thought about many times. Me and my mother, it was years ago when we went to the Lexus dealership, and I don't know if any of you have ever been to a dealership, but they usually come at you with a force to see what you know, what do you want to buy? Like, what's going on? We were not approached. We watched a group of white men smoking at the doors as we walked in the sun looking at those Lexus. And my mom was like, yeah, okay, yeah, they think I don't have money. We went next door to the other Lexus dealership where we were meted and greeted with enthusiasm and how you should greet a customer. And that's where my mother purchased her Lexus that day, because it was like, are you kidding me? And it's just right in your face. Like, it's, why not treat me the same way you just treated those customers? There's countless of stories like that, you know?
Mm-hmm.
That was at a young age.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. I've experienced that with housing too, with looking at apartments that are considered luxury apartments, and there's only one skin complexion that works in there, and 9 times out of 10 is predominantly white. I've had brokers tell me and my aunt, who actually is a veteran, she makes 6 figures, owns multiple homes, and has good credit, that we have to jump through hoops to live here because you're considered middle income.
Mm-hmm.
It's very snobby. You're not welcome here. So that was a form of discrimination that I experienced. But if I knew if it was someone who was white, they would be rolling out the red carpet like, come on in, move in. Would they live here?
Yeah, it's back to what V said. It's like we put all these obstacles in front of us, but yeah, we definitely still find a way. Resilient people. But yes, you guys should totally look into redlining, because that goes into what V's talking about, and just how hard it was to even get a loan. My mother has stories again in that department. A county worker, excellent credit score, married the manager in her department, and her counterpart went to the same credit union to get a loan. They got $70K back, lower paid, worse credit score. My mother got $30,000 for her home loan. Wow. Versus that couple of $70K. Just about that.
Yeah. It's real.
It's real.
So we're almost done. Does anybody else have any more questions?
I want to say there's not only is there, it happens individually with certain people, but there's a systematic racism and discrimination, even practices that's in place. And so I just making that known, like it's awesome that if you never have to experience it in person yet, but you'll at least, whether you know it or not, there's like systems in place where when you finally, learn and be like, oh snap, there's things that are there to keep you down because of, your skin color, and you're perceived as a threat or not wanted. And so just, think about that, research that. And so I really wanted to end this off too. I know Vianney, second is, what is it that we could do individually? What can we do, especially for the teens? Like, what can they do?
Mm-hmm.
So we all came up with some ways that you could take part in the movement. There are more ways, but we're going to name just 3. So if you're allowed to, you can peacefully protest. You can share and sign petitions, and also hold others accountable. So speak up. Like if you see someone doing something wrong, saying something wrong, it's going to be very tough, hard conversations that you may even have to have with loved ones. Like even me, as a person of color, I have to have tough conversations with relatives, but just holding others accountable, I think it's really important during this time. And also, just when you walk through your daily life, or if you do decide to go to the protest, we want you all to be safe. So the ACLU actually posted some information on knowing your rights when you're stopped by the police. Also, when you're organizing a protest or you are protesting, and we'll share a link with that information. I think it's a great website to start at to find some information on your First Amendment rights.
Mm-hmm. For example, you can video record in a public space when you're at a protest. So if you're told you cannot, just you cannot be on private property, but if it's a public place, you are allowed to video record. Because I know that's a big question.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot take your photos.
Yeah, I definitely also wanted to say that there, amongst the madness and the trauma that we're seeing on social media and the misinformation, there are a lot of positive images being, in content on social media. And a lot of this information, if you follow the right people, the right activists, they're constantly posting on their Insta stories, and including links, especially if they have 10,000 followers or more to different organizations that you can join or research, and different movements.
Yeah.
We're also learning more about our history as well, like different Black-owned businesses, Black and brown businesses that you can also buy from. How we impact the culture, like we are the culture as a people. Like I just want to say, like, Black and brown kids are so dope. They're so creative, and I think that is something that we need to stress to them. Besides, like, the oppression, they're scared of you because they're dope. You're so dope. Like, they steal from us all the time and try to market it as something that they've created. But we've originated a lot of things, and it's something to be proud of, and it's something to research and to hold on to and to remember that as you navigate through the world. So, through your journey. So I just want.
So one thing to do also is some self-evaluation.
Mm-hmm.
Or have reported any racist bias or any prejudices against other people as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, whether you're Black, white, doesn't matter, but especially like, how have I supported in a way that belief that, you know, the systemic oppression of like Black people, like, yeah, you know what? I really do think that Black people are just stupid. So that belief, it evolves into like, hey, one day you are a manager of a company, and when you're about to hire somebody, if you see a resume with a Black sounding name, that belief is festered into you saying like, hey, I'm not gonna hire this Black person. I think they're Black. Like, so like, what are some of the small beliefs that we probably have that we could self-check? Things that has probably been taught to us that is just not right. So yeah, some self-evaluation can help.
You wouldn't think that happens, but yeah, if your name's, I almost said it, but if your name's just very long and complicated or with a lot of syllables, your application's to the side automatically.
There's the Isha.
The Ishas,
Mm-hmm.
the Quas in the middle.
Yeah,
I know this.
definitely.
The capital letters in the middle, it happens.
Mm-hmm.
There's a study. There's plenty of studies. Again, if you want to know, there's so many studies that shows this is a fact.
Yeah.
I actually did a project in college. I simply went around with a photo, believe it or not, a Black woman and a non-Black. Who got the job? That's it. Who got this job? Can anybody guess what 90% of my peers said?
You already know.
Exactly. So, yeah.
Those are great points, especially the point that Chris made, because even people of color, we have to like consciously unlearn a lot of things that we were taught. And sometimes we can have biases against other people of color as well. Like, I'm not sure if you've heard of like the LA riots in 1992. Like, we are literally living through history. This is not
Can we tell kids if we don't know?
Oh, okay. So I actually, I have it right here. So it happened, it was unrest began in South Central Los Angeles in April 29th of 1992, where there were 4 officers who were acquitted for using excessive force in arrest and beating Rodney King. And that was actually videotaped and widely viewed in TV broadcasts. So when they were acquitted, there were major riots that broke out. There was a lot of violence and looting in LA. And it was just like a very, very dark time. But also during that time, there was a killing of Latasha Harlins by a 53-year-old Korean woman who owned a store. Latasha was only, I may be wrong, but I'm estimating she was around 14 or 15 years old. So that caused a lot of conflict between Black Americans and Korean Americans in the community. So it was just a lot of violence during that time. But there's been plenty of riots. There's been the Watt riot. There's been riots in Miami that Rachel actually educated me on. I didn't know about Arthur McDuffie. In 1980. He was killed in 1979. So it's countless, like, riots. There's a Detroit riot in 1967, Newark riots in 1967 as well. And this all had to do with police brutality. People are just angry at the treatment. Or
We aren't far from those times.
no, not at all.
We are not far from those times. So you guys are totally living history. You are a part of history. We are here. We are here. It's unfortunate though that I will still be telling these stories, and my mother, you know, has been telling me these stories for so long. She remembers seeing colored signs. My mother had to go into a colored restroom. My mother remembers being asked, her and her mother, get and move to the back. And I'm here. I'm her daughter. I am here. We're not far from those times. So remember that.
Your mom's gonna be like, why are you telling my age?
Oh no, my mother would come and she'd tell it all.
She'd tell it all.
She's proud of her age. Yeah, she's been through, she's lived it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So all of your grandparents, all of them have history. Look into it. Know your history and find the roots of it, and you'll trace it back to some richness. For a lot of people of color, our history did not begin with slavery, but know that.
At all.
It's been very rich. Yes, ancient civilizations, and they're still taking diamonds.
Egyptian
Still taking diamonds from Africa. Still taking gold from Africa. That's what it was.
Sorry, I didn't mean to. My apologies. As a kid, what I was taught was Africans just live in huts.
Oh yeah.
You was feed the children. But if you go to Nigeria right now, their downtown rivals. It's beautiful. The architecture, everything. Like, it rivals Miami. I'm sorry. It rivals Miami.
Sorry, not sorry.
Not sorry. Like,
you guys could also, I heard there was this artist named Chris. Go watch a music video.
Chris Miller? I love Chris Miller G.
Oh
I'm just saying. Thank you, Nate Khalil.
I do want to say one more thing. Can you guys hear me? Sorry.
Yeah.
You know, kind of like piggyback off what Chris said is like this self-evaluation, because we can give you all the help that we can get, like for what to do now, like, you know, to protest or to sign petitions, to educate yourself. All that's good, but you really got to look at yourself, you know, and see what can you do to be a better, you know, person to the people around you, right? But the biggest thing that, like, what we have to learn from this is, like, at least speaking for, you know, for white people, it's like racism and discrimination has been in this country for years, hundreds of years, right? And a lot of people may say, well, that's not my fault, you know, because that's been there, you know, it's existed, and maybe I didn't do this. But that doesn't mean that just because it's not your fault, it's not your problem. You know, I've heard this saying so common, like, around, you know, my friends and, like, just like people I know. It's like they say it might not be your fault, but it is all of our problem. And, you know, this problem that we have of, you know, racism and discrimination is, right, we see that it's a cancer to our society. We see that it's become a problem that we have now waited so long, you know, not that we've waited so long, but if we don't do anything about it, it's going to just keep getting worse. But I think what we always have to look back is ourselves and self-evaluate what we can do to be better. And these 4 words are what stuck out to me, I think, this past weekend, that I've been just, like, self-evaluating. The first 2 are epiphany and intentionality. Epiphany is like, right, you wherever it is you are, you realize that, okay, I realize I need to do something, or you realize the problem, or you just now been awakened to something. And when that happens, you now know that you got something to do. And that's where it comes to intentionality, right? Where you're going to go and then be intentional as to, you know, call out somebody that says something racism. You're going to say, no, that's wrong. You shouldn't say this. That's discriminative towards that race towards that, towards their belief, towards what they say or whatever it may be. And then the next two words are, sorry, right now, are empathy, right? Empathy is not just feeling bad for someone's situation. Like every time I hear, like, a friend may be like, yo, dude, like I lost my job or whatever. And you're just like, yeah, man, whatever you need, I got you. Like, it's not being empathetic for someone, you're just like, you're saying that you're there for them, but you're not feeling what they're feeling, right? And to be in somebody's shoes, that's how you feel, like empathy for that person. And then the last thing is advocacy, right? We think that, we're not like big as celebrities, right? That we can go or politicians, and we can go on places to talk about all these things that, or go to protests and be the one in front of everybody to give a speech and, yeah, that's right. No, but you do have some sort of influence around you, in your small circle, whether it's be just your little cousin or, a group of friends, or, you do have a crowd or a following on your Instagram, whatever it may be. You have some sort of influence that you pull. And, I think that's something that we need to really look back and, like, with these four things, that what are we going to do about that? We're going to, just stand here and like do nothing, or are we going to, mention those things? Are we going to stand up for that? So I just want to encourage you guys, especially the teens, that, we're here for you guys. We want to stand by you. We listen to you guys. We want to hear you. But encourage you guys to also, like, be informed, be educated, but also look into yourselves to see what you got to do to be better. I think this podcast has been amazing. I believe we're going to have more of these discussions, serious discussions, and open it for you guys to share, to be, informed, but also to grow from this. So I know we went over our time, but we definitely want to finish it off on a good note. I think Chantel has something prepared for us.
Yes, so we're going to close it up, but we're going to have a virtual vigil for not all, just a few of some of our fallen citizens due to the hands of police brutality. So we don't have any candles or anything, but we ask that you can just put up a thumbs up after each name is called, and that will be our moment of silence for that individual. Okay? So one of the recent, Breonna Taylor, rest in peace. Mike Brown. Tamir Rice. Eric Garner. Philando Castile. And one of the most recent, George Floyd. And take a moment for them, and we hope that justice will be served, and our hearts go out to everyone that's been affected by this atrocity.
Thank you so much for that. We're about to close. If you go to church, you know how the pastor keeps going and going and going. We're not going to do that to you, but we do have 2 more announcements, or maybe 3 that Rachel wants to share.
I'll make this very brief. So in keeping in the light of this conversation, Juneteenth is going to be this Friday, the 19th. It's a celebration of the emancipation of Black people and all slaves. It's a national holiday, and there is a lot of events commemorating. A great way to build community. Maybe look up if there's any local events, if you are of that mind, or you could speak with your friends and celebrate. Another occasion that we are starting up in the library is now Healthy Minds, Healthy Bodies. If you're familiar, the libraries will be serving lunch and breakfast to children and teens 18 and under. It's a free nutritious meal that you'll be able to pick up at many branches of the library on Fridays from June 12th to August 14th. And finally, we will announce our Friday podcast. We would be glad to see you here yet again in this virtual space that we call YOUmedia Miami.
Thank you so much. It was great speaking with you all.
Come back now. You hear?
Nate, it's awesome seeing you, bro.
Likewise.
You inspire us.
You do.
Mm-hmm.
Where's Nate? Well,
Later, y'all. See you on the next one.
bye.
Be safe.
Hope alive.